I've got a slide that I just wanted to call for today, and I wanted to call this morning's service, I Once Was Lost, but Now I'm Found. We've actually, I've asked the worship team, the Paul worship team, to sing an old hymn, Amazing Grace. They're used to singing it the new way, so they had trying to sing it back the old way, but a lot of us here will remember that. So we're going to be singing that later, but the line, of course, comes out of that. I once was lost, but now I'm found. And I've approached a couple of people in our congregation this morning and asked them to share their testimonies with us, to share their story. And I asked them 3 questions. What was life like before you met Jesus? That's the I once was lost bit. And then I asked them, how did you encounter Jesus? And that's the but. I once was lost, but. And then I've asked them to share what has changed since they met Jesus. Now I'm found. And we've all got one of those stories. But I'd just first of all like to invite Janet to come and share her testimony with us. Let's give her a welcome.
Well, it's very true. I was very lost, very, very lost. But it's interesting when you start thinking about giving your testimony, and Sarah's given me 5 to 10 minutes. It's a very long story, so I've made it very short. Does anybody recognise this? Anyone got one of those in the archive? This is the Book of Common Prayer, which someone gave to my parents when I was born, which is really amazing. And so I was brought up in the Anglican church until I was 14. And so this book for me represents the beginning of my story. This represents my head knowledge about Jesus. And this book represents my relationship with Jesus. So this is the head and this is the heart. And there's an extremely long story between one end and the other, those 2 bookends of my life. But when I was 14, I went to a Methodist, thank you, Methodist people. I went to a Methodist camp and I gave my life to Jesus. But within quite a few years, particularly when I went back to this lovely church, and they sort of were completely horrified that I had been filled with the Holy Spirit and had met Jesus. And so over the next few years, there was really no relationship with God. And so, but I have a friend who's going to help me right now, because we can't do this journey without friends. We can't do it without God, and we can't do it without friends. And this is my very good friend, Di. So I got lost pretty quickly. And in that horrible journey of lostness, God did have a plan. But because I had no relationship with God, I just wandered away. God still, she's a great God, isn't she? God still had a hold of me, but it was sort of like a long, and I see this in my life, this long elastic band. And in that lostness, my marriage broke down, I got divorced, my dad got cancer, my daughter died in a car accident, then my dad died, and I was just completely lost. I had been searching in all the wrong places. I'd been going over here to the New Age, I'd been going over here to gurus, I'd read every book you could read. And I said to a friend one day, there must be a book with all the answers, because I just keep hitting brick walls. I became a Reiki healer. I was really into crystals and tarot and just crazy stuff. But it was my heart reaching out, but God never let go. He never let go of me in all that hideousness and in all of that lostness and loneliness. But, and this is where we all come in, I got invited to church. And very reluctantly I went, but I knew that if I went to church, I would get to go to lunch with my favourite aunt and uncle. It was really the coffee and the lunch that got me there. And when I walked in, I thought, it's very friendly, nice people, but not my tribe. And during the service, I had this little voice in my head going, oh my goodness, these people are just waving their arms in the air and they're all completely mad. Can't wait to get out of here. What are we going to have for lunch? And anyway, at the end of the service, the pastor said, please come out if you'd like prayer for pain. And I had fallen down a flight just 2 days before, down a flight of marble stairs in Sydney after an absolutely disastrous business meeting, and my back was really sore. And somehow or other, I found myself walking down the aisle of the church towards the front with this voice in my head going, you look completely stupid. What are you doing this for? But I kept walking, and there was something drawing me to the front. And when I got to the front, the pastor came directly to me and he said, where is your pain? And I said, I put this hand on my back, and then immediately this hand went to my heart, and I said, in my heart, with this little voice going, that's ridiculous. I don't remember anything else because I fell on the floor and I had never seen anyone get filled with the Spirit ever. I'd never seen it on television or anything. And I came to, and my aunt is very beautiful and she has the most amazing wardrobe and amazing cupboard full of gorgeous shoes. And I remember thinking, oh, they are such lovely shoes. Why are they 2 inches from my face? So I felt so clean, and I remember saying to everyone around me, I feel so clean, what have you done to me? And so that was the beginning of my journey, really, really the beginning, and that's over 30 years ago. So God was just pulling me very, very gently all through the mire and the mud. God was just pulling me. But really, we can't do anything without God, and we can't do anything without friends, particularly friends who are praying for us. So God has a plan for everybody, a plan to give you a hope and a future no matter what is going on. And I give God all glory today for the fact that Michael, the miracle man, hit by a car on his bike, and he's still sitting here. The hospital could not believe it.
How exciting is it? How encouraging. We're all nodding away because we can remember being in the same place, can't we? We've all got that white string, I think, that God's had to pull on it pretty hard at some times. Dan, your turn. Woohoo! How good is it to see Dan playing bass? He does amazing at that.
Thank you very much. Just got to grab my iPad. I decided to write a poem, so hopefully it makes sense. It sounded good in my head. Where's it gone? Sorry, the iPad's quite slow. It's just got to catch up. I thought I left the page open, but I can't find it. There it is. All right. So, just a little background on me, because like most of you know me by now, but I was an electrician. I spent my life working on things that I could see and fix, like cables and wires, but God found me in a place that I couldn't fix myself. So, I once was lost. I built a life on cables, wires and grit, a self-made man with every lamplight lit. But 16 years of distance left a strain upon the heart, with cut-off roots abandoned and lives pulled far apart. An electrician's burden, the paperwork and phone. Busy in a crowded world, yet utterly alone. Emotionally absent, though my hands were full. I felt the constant, heavy, worldly pull. The pressure pushed to breaking. Several times I nearly fell, plagued by very dark thoughts in a self-made busy hell. I thought I'd solved the mystery with cold and clever head. We live, we toil, we distract ourselves, and then we're merely dead. I thought that I was logical, a scholar of the real, that I was just a cog and life a gear within a wheel. I called it intellectual, the void I couldn't mend, just busy with the nonsense until the bitter end. But dark thoughts like a poison began to fill the soul as the pressure of the nonsense took its heavy, jagged toll. But the rhythm of the busy life was shattered by a blow, a diagnosis, then a fault that laid my partner low. A major mess up at the ward nearly took my partner's life, so I tried to run a business and care for a sick wife. Then hardship piled on hardship, our daughter's deep relapse. The weight of her anorexia brought me closer to collapse. With my daughter's fading shadow and my wife's fragile breath, I stood amongst the ruins, facing sickness, facing death. The medical system had failed. Shadows touched the door. Our life became a battle. Then it became a war. I had nothing in the tank when my wife began to pray, enlisting others in the chain to help me find the way. She asked them all to intercede, to soften up my heart, to let God in to heal the soul and give a brand new start. She spoke with such a quiet strength, beginning then to say, God is real, the Bible's true, and Christ can lead the way. She was speaking of something ancient, speaking something true. She said, ask him for a sign and see what Jesus does for you. An atheist, a skeptic, I'd argued for so long, but I didn't have the heart to prove my darling wife was wrong. She was always right before, so I went to search for proof and skipped the old style arguments to find the actual truth. In just 2 days of seeking, I walked out to the trees and felt a rush of love that brought me right down to my knees. I shouted to the birds that it was true, and in that air, the God I'd long denied was standing right beside me there. The birds became my witness as I shouted through the rain. My logic had been broken. I'd been born again. Now I'm found. I felt the change immediate, a shift within the bone. The things I'd once clung to, I now wish to disown. Not because of duty or a law upon the shelf, but I didn't want to wound the God who'd saved me from myself. With 4 pages of my failures and a priest to hear my plea, I learned how Jesus' sacrifice was meant for even me. I'd wasted 47 years in a godless, weary haze, so I read the sacred pages in 106 days. From Eden to the cross, I had no time to spare. So I raced through every chapter, finding wisdom everywhere. I'll be reading the same book for the rest of my long life, finding peace within the struggle, finding hope amidst the strife. For no amount of living well can make a spirit whole, because only God can fill the hollow of a God-shaped hole. Thank you very much. That's about it.
Wow. Wow. We love Dan and we love Sharon. We're just so happy to be walking this journey with you guys, to watch you, the way Jesus has just met you where you're at. And it's so great to have you back with us this morning, Sharon. Alrighty, let's move on to Kelly. Woohoo! Yeah, I know. I should have saved Dan's for last.
How do I follow? That was amazing. Hello, everybody. So I was truly lost. In fact, I was so lost I didn't even know that there was a roadmap that I needed. My life was a life of fear. Everything was scary to me. I had fear of loss because I'd had a lot of death around me. I had a fear of living. I had a fear of dying. I had fear of eating. I had fear of not having enough to eat. I had fear of loss of control. I had fear of being controlled. I sowed to the wind and I reaped the whirlwind. My life was ugly, really ugly. I was surrounded by ugly. I was surrounded by people doing ugly things. And I did ugly and I was ugly. And I knew that there was something more. There was something that was going to pull me out of that, but I didn't know exactly what it was. I knew there was a God, but I didn't know Jesus yet. So I was allowed, that was my life before. I was allowed to choose a school, and I chose a Catholic school. My mum and dad weren't Christians, but there were Christians in my family. But I was completely isolated from my family. I didn't know anyone in my family. All of my Christian family were in the UK. But they were prayers. And they prayed faithfully. They prayed for my dad, they prayed for my mum, and they prayed for me. And God, in my journey, put so many Christian people on my path. It didn't matter who they were or where they were in their journey, something that they've said to me pointed me to the man who was going to save my life. And Jesus revealed himself to me in places and ways that were so personal and that I could understand intimately. He would come in dreams. He would come through what people would say to me. Sometimes I would think, oh, what an idiot, what a stupid thing to say to me at this point in my life. You don't even know me. You don't know the person I am. I'm awful. But there were people out there that had faith in me and that knew God could change my life. And they shared that with me. And bit by bit by bit, God chipped away at the hardness and the prickliness and the cactus that I was. And one day just something in my heart shifted. And I started to hear these people and I took on what they said about me. So I was over in Westminster in England. I had had a termination. I haven't shared that before. And I was 19 and I hated myself for what I did. And I couldn't forgive myself. And the Holy Spirit met me. I was looking through the beautiful rose wheel there and the light was coming in and there was an organist practicing and it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life. And it was like someone had come up to me and wrapped their arms around me, and in that instant I knew that that was Jesus. And so then I started dipping into church. I started coming into the odd service and sneaking out the back. I, bit by bit, let people into my heart. So for me, what has changed is that was the full stop. And Jesus showed me that I have freedom and I am free. He put my feet on the rock because I had nothing stable to cling to. I had nowhere that I could go and I couldn't hide anymore. I couldn't run away from what I'd done. I couldn't run away from the person I was. And he took me out of that miry clay and he reshaped me. And I know that in all my imperfections, I'm enough for him. He loves me. And he is that person that I can go to give my burdens to. He took my shame and he didn't judge me because of my scars, because he had scars too. So he let me just let go, and he was able to love me enough for me to let go of the steering wheel of my life, which was out of control before, but I was still driving, and I had to take my hands off and let him just take over. I had to be in the passenger seat. And once I did that, can't tell you exactly when that happened, but all of a sudden, when I let go, I didn't have to be scared anymore because he was the driver. So that's what's changed in my life. It's all Jesus, and I can just be free to be me now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kelly. So beautiful. Do I need to pass the tissues around? I'll just let you say hello to Wayne, and then it's Wayne's turn. Sorry, Wayne.
Morning, church. Well, they've all just been fantastic, great testimonies. So I guess as a kid growing up, I probably led a fairly good life. Was never sort of lacked of anything. We always, as a family, had good provisions. Grew up, never really had a family where we had church or never went to church or anything like that, but always believed in something greater than me. And as I grew up from a kid into an adult, finally left home, started living my own life, my own way. It's a long story, but I'll try and keep it short. Moved in with my sister, started living my own sort of free life. Everything was really great. And then I sort of met up with a group of people that weren't so nice, and spent probably the next 20 years of my life with these people that weren't great. So I just started spiralling downhill every day, every week, just continuing on this downhill spiral to the point where I was just completely lost. Just did not know who I was, where I was. Got to a point where I was pretty much just living in a caravan, no food, no money, doing drugs and alcohol, drinking, just partying. So it got to the point where I just woke up one morning and I said, no, this is not me. I can't keep doing this. So I came back home. My dad passed away. In that interim, when Dad passed away, he actually passed away when I was on holiday with a couple of these mates. And so I actually didn't even get to say goodbye to my dad. So that was tough. My dad and I really didn't have a great relationship, not because there was any untowards to it. It was just that we just didn't have that bond. And then it was, I just had to change. So Mum had moved down here, and then I just packed up, came down and just started a new life. So I created my own business. I had my own sort of window pressure cleaning business, and then things were great. I was sort of looking, things were looking really upwards. And then it's probably not long after that my mum passed away as well. And I just sat in the chair one day and my dog passed away. So he was my soulmate. And so I was just remember sitting in the chair. I said, God, what is this? Like, what do you want from me? Just please send me someone that can just get me through this. And so he sent me my beautiful wife, who is now my beautiful wife, who gave me that opportunity to come to the Lord. And we had battles with one another where we just fought with one another because I had my own version of God. And I just thought that was my God and that was what it was all about. So we used to sort of go to and fro from one another just to say, well, no, that's my God. She said, no, that's not your God. So anyway, I just got to the point where I was just on a work site one day and just said, right, I'm just doing this. And I just asked for the Lord to come into my life, and instantly I just fell to the ground and I was crying, and I just felt this massive pressure, this load just come from my shoulders. And that was when I knew that he was there, that the real God was there and the real Jesus was there. And so, that's when I became found. And now, not having a place to go to, now I know I've got a home to go to in Jesus. Yeah. Thank you.
So special. Stories, we tell them because they just bring us to life and they just point to how good Jesus is, don't they? One more for today. Mr. Derek Burns, your turn.
Thank you so much for those testimonies. They're so powerful, and I just love hearing other people's journey, and you just reflect on your own and go, oh my goodness, we're so similar. It's like God's planned this or something. Anyway, before God, I was raised a Catholic. My family is not very close. I had an artistic talent, so I went to Melbourne to study design at 18, and I found Melbourne really stimulating. I wasn't a Christian. I hung out with artists and musicians, and I was a hedonist. So I followed pleasure, good feeling, music, into reggae, outdoor raves, bush doofs, indoor raves, music festivals. It was creative. So it's normal to take recreational drugs. It's a term, recreational. Oh yeah, that means you're not addicted. You're doing it for fun, so that's okay. And I was thinking about that term. I'm like, where did that even come from? And it was like the 60s and 70s. Are like, oh, these people aren't addicted. But it's amazing. You hang out with those crowds and you think, no, I'm this kind of person. I'm a good person. I can take drugs and just be fine. And then you meet people in that journey. You could just be, and then there's someone just offering you something more hardcore, and you're like, ooh. Or you just meet someone that's not a great character, a shady character, and you go, wow, I'm on the verge of, I'm on the skirts here of some really bad things. So I was also into New Age and into meditation. And in my journey in Melbourne, I did a 10-day retreat of meditating without talking. I practiced Qigong. I practiced all types of things, yoga. So I thought, I'm being spiritual. I'm being a good person. And I remember doing some other things. So I was on a ghost tour for fun. And I had some disturbing spiritual experiences, disturbing spiritual experience after that. And I couldn't resolve what was going on. Like, I thought I was a good person, I'm doing what the world thinks is right. Oh yeah, I'm having these relationships. They're not really working out. Oh yeah, that's what you do. You just sleep around. Yeah, that's that's fine. We're being good to each other. It's consensual. Oh, we don't want a child now. I'll pressure them into a termination. And God showed me how horrible that was later. But yeah, anyway, my relationship, nothing was working. I got to 28, and nothing's working. Just came back to Geelong, moved back in with my parents, and I felt like a bit of a failure. And I was working in a call centre in Geelong. And there was a person in the break room. He looked a bit strange. He was just kind of talking to the air. And I was a pretty friendly guy. And I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm just thinking about how good is God. And I'm like, okay. And so we struck up a conversation, and I was into spiritual things. So we ended up talking a lot, and we debated a little bit. He's like, so what do you think about God? And I'm like, oh, well, God's just everything, you know, everywhere around me. He goes, well, did God create cancer? I'm like, oh, I don't know, I guess. And he goes, well, does God kill children with cancer then? I'm like, maybe. And he goes, well, does that mean God's good if he's killing children with cancer? I'm like, oh, I guess not. And he goes, well, my God doesn't do that. So you better think about what you believe as God, because God doesn't do that. And I'm like, oh. So he debated with me. And meanwhile, I found out later he was praying, and he had a team praying for me. And eventually he invited me to his church, which was a local church in Sarah was a part of in Geelong. And I remember going there, and there was a preacher, an African preacher named Daniel. It was only a small, maybe 15 people there at this service. And he gave his testimony about drinking and partying and just having an empty life and giving his life to Jesus. And I was like, well, that sounds like me. And it resonated with me. My head was like, this is rubbish. This is such rubbish. Look at these people. I hear it so many times when you walk into a church unsaved, you're just like, look at these idiots. But my heart was going, what have you got to lose? Go. And my head's going, no. And the preacher's like, come up the front. So I came up the front, and I said the sinner's prayer. And I remember just crying and feeling this sense of just burden gone, left me, and just release. And it felt like coming home. I was like, oh, this is kind of what I used to experience as a kid when I was in church and I was look around, or those quiet moments. So I had a new lease on life. I had a church family, and I had a reason to live, and I got back into music, and I was like, oh, I can play music to God. And my theology wasn't great, wasn't stable, but I just kind of threw myself into everything the church had, and it was really, I started to see incredible stuff. And I started to find out that I was a horrible person. It was like, wow, I'm really crap. And I really had to repent of a lot of things. And I still do today. It's just like, oh gosh, God, that was a really horrible thing I did. And God's gracious and merciful, and just showed me, to stay with me, stay in that relationship, and I will help you build order in your life. And that's what he did. So my searching led to God, to Jesus, and I still had questions, but I knew there was goodness here, and goodness was on my side. So when I had those bad spiritual experiences, it was kind of like things would appear in my dreams. I would have these things asking me to join them. It was very, very strange and bizarre. And now I knew, there's something on my side now that is all powerful, that these things shudder, these things run. And I remember after 3 weeks of being a Christian, I was at a prayer meeting. I had a sore back. I thought, oh yeah, pray for me, please. And the minister was like, yep. And he started breaking things off my life. And he's praying for me. And I remember just going, oh gosh, this is, I'm feeling a bit sweaty. I just thought, oh, and I ended up lying on the ground. And he's praying things on me, and I'm like, oh, and I felt like something came up out of my throat. And I could only describe it as a hot wind, because I felt fine. And all of a sudden my throat is very, very dry. And it was like, and he's going, come out. And I'm like, what's coming out? And it just came out of my throat, and it wanted to swear at him. But I'm like, I don't want to swear at you. But it just wanted to go, eh. And there's something went, and I coughed. You know, the usual, I say usual, if you've been in church circles and you see in a deliverance, it was like coughing up phlegm, and they had a tissue, and something came out of me. It was a really bizarre experience. And I felt exhausted, but I felt like, lighter. And it even gave me a picture of when it, kind of how it got in there. I remember I was attacked by skinheads in Geelong, and I was kicked to the ground, like beaten up. And this like hatred came into me at that point. And it was kind of really strange. And I talked to them. He goes, well, that's how it probably got in. God's giving you a picture. And yeah, now you kind of know. You're a bit wiser. I'm like, okay, great. And he did say, push into your Bible, pray, keep these things out because they can come back. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. So, it was just a really fantastic time, that first 2 years of being, or a year and a half being born again, because I was just like doing everything. We went on a prayer walk through the city and I felt moved. I'll go into that sex shop and I'll just talk to the guy and hand him a gospel tract. Just because I'll just try it. And I was thinking, this is going to be so embarrassing. Here you go, God, Jesus loves you, and runs there. And he went, stop. And I went, what? And he goes, well, what church do you go to? I'm like, just up there. And he goes, maybe I'll come. And I said, yeah, cool. And he did. He came to church. And we saw him a few times. And we were inspired just to do lots of evangelism. So I ended up we did a crucifixion scene in the centre of Geelong in 2009 at Easter. And I was involved in that. And I was on the cross playing Jesus, and my family visited, and they're not born again. And they still find it funny. My dad always says, you're hanging around town. And he brings that joke up still. And I'll see him now. And so anyway, God, that was what God did in my life. And he's still showing me things, amazing things. He's got more. So I think after I was born again, gave me order. He gave more questions still come up, but I've got somewhere to take them, So anyway, thanks for listening, guys.
No words. I won't say anything about that one. Could I have the worship team back up, please? And the communion elements handed out. How encouraging, though. What I think is really cool is, from what we've heard today, just the similarities. If I was pretty messed up, I was pretty broken, and then God used someone. How important is it that we share our faith? I know the guy that witnessed to Derek in a huge call centre, and people go, yeah, he's nuts. But my husband got saved because he was nuts, because he was brave enough to be unashamed about his faith. So when I hear these testimonies, I go, I'm going to tell someone about Jesus, because you never know what's going on in their life and what they're waiting for and what questions they're asking. So thank you so much, everybody that shared. Thank you for being so vulnerable with us this morning. We're so encouraged. We're just going to, if you'd like to stand, we're going to sing Amazing Grace. We're going to sing about how we were once lost, but now we're found. And as we're singing that, I just encourage you to take your communion in your own time with the Lord, just thanking him for what he's done in your life.
Thanks for listening to the Drysdale Community Church Sunday Recap Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for future episode releases. Also consider liking our Facebook page to stay up to date with all that's happening within the life of our church.